The whole court system's in a tough position because of this new world of technology. So if the story happens here that's of global interest, of course the world is going to want to watch, and the world is not bound by Canadian law.
If he was not talking, if he was not publishing about it, I wouldn't be even able to find a lawyer who would deal with this matter. So I'm really thankful to him. I think it's a huge breach of the freedom of speech.
If no adults know what the effects of these drugs are, because there's never been any studies, how can a child give informed consent? Obviously, this is impossible. But the judge doesn't want to hear this.
And you know what's been completely absent from this hearing is the fact that the daughter instructed her legal counsel not to put her father in jail.
Exactly.
And at that point, the lawyers said, oh, we're not going to listen to the instructions of this child anymore. We're going to become friends of the court. And the Attorney General was invited in. And suddenly this family matter turns into this escalation.
Jen Smith got on the stage there and basically said that the reason CD behaved the way he did, the reason he spoke out in the way he did, was because of the far right grifters and nutcases had gotten into his head. Am I a grifter? Like Rebel News, are we grifters and just using CD with our coverage? Or guys, YouTube is trying to get rid of us. We need to keep in touch. Go to afteryoutube.com right now. They can cut us off at any moment. I'm hoping today is going to be a great day. I'm hoping the father that I've been covering so closely at rebelnews.com, I can only refer to him as CD in the CD versus AB case, the father who spoke out against his child being medically transitioned against his consent. I'm hoping he's going to walk out those doors today, and I'm not alone. There is a group of people here as well. They're already heading inside. I even brought some little noisemakers so we can celebrate, and for once I wore a suit. I know it's not about me, but I just wanted to make sure we celebrate right if he gets out, and I'm really hoping, since he's taking a plea deal and saying, okay, I breached those, I've learned my lesson, that he'll be out.
Certainly the judge seems very angst is the word. I could come up with a better word.
And he's in a tough position, wouldn't you say? Because actually this is a precedent-setting case. It's the first of its kind that we know of. He's in a tough position.
Well, and I think the whole court system's in a tough position because of this new world of technology. So if the story happens here that's of global interest, of course the world is going to want to watch, and the world is not bound by Canadian law. And this is the reality. This is the new reality we are dealing with. And I think the court's having a hard time coming into that perspective of understanding the tool we have at our disposal now. And you know, it's a tool that enables and empowers people to have a voice. The court is not innocent. The court makes mistakes. Judges are unaccountable. We have a lot of problems with the judiciary system in Canada that need to have remedy.
Well, it looks like we won't be celebrating anytime soon. Justice Taman said that he has no intention of letting this father out while he makes his decision. A debate in there is going on. The Crown is listing breach after breach after breach on something that CD stood up and said he pleads guilty for. Breaching these publication bans that restrict this father, this concerned father who's been trying to warn other parents. The same publication bans that prevent him from telling you his story and prevent me from telling you the story as well. That's why we're challenging those publication bans, and that's why we need you to join us on that fight at letusreport.com. But yeah, he's not getting out today. And basically, there was also another mention of how the sentencing should go. So if you didn't catch my last report, CD has agreed to go on probation for 18 months as well as time served, 45 days in jail. But what's happening now is, I guess there's some old assault charge where he was given a conditional discharge, and that was brought up by Crown today, basically saying, well, he's already had his chance, meaning he should have a criminal record when he's done this. If that's the case, if that's how Justice Taman rules, this father will not only have sent time in jail for speaking out against the medical transitioning of his child against his consent, he will also be a criminal for the rest of his life, not able to travel, be restricted to certain jobs. This is insane. This is not Canada. I'm going to go back in there, and I hope when I come out, I have better news for you.
One of the things that they were talking about is that harm, what is the harm that has come to the daughter as opposed to the harm as well that maybe came to the judges, the harm that came to the doctors. Let's understand, one of the doctors in this proceeding bragged at a library that you know well about.
I do. We recorded him, and I just received a whole bunch more freedom of information that's going to make it mandatory that we talk at length about what this doctor is doing and the child abuse that is ensuing as a result of this so-called psychologist.
This doctor brags about the transitioning of children. That is recorded. He also has been on numerous television shows. We have the clips of that as well. And so to say that now somehow because a father has been irreparably harmed by his actions and now the father has to be silent and that now there's harm towards the doctors, well, hey, if you're doing something that you're not proud of and it can't be spoken out loud, maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
And you know what's been completely absent from this hearing is the fact that the daughter instructed her legal counsel not to put her father in jail.
Exactly.
And at that point the lawyers said, oh, we're not going to listen to the instructions of this child anymore. We're going to become friends of the court. And the Attorney General was invited in. And suddenly this family matter turns into this escalation.
Matter.
It'll be very, very interesting to see this so-called victim impact statement and whether or not this same child that just a few months ago didn't want her father incarcerated is somehow now changing her position on this. And is that due to the influence of the activists?
And sadly, what's not going to happen now is expert testimony from those who are involved in transitioning children, doctors from across the world who know very, very well the data, the statistics, how harmful this is to children, what is all coming out now. Unfortunately, that will not be able to be presented because of the plea, and CD has said that he's guilty. And so he's been, in a way, it's cut off the possibility of doing more.
So we just got out on lunch break, and I want to really drive home how ridiculous these bans are and how they're being used in specific cases to, in my opinion, distract from an important discussion about what's happening to our children that are being medically transitioned, or in some cases, in your cases, almost having body parts removed. Now, I have done a full interview with this mom here before. I'll refer to her as AM because just like CD, I'm not allowed to tell you her name or show you her face, and you're limited to telling your story. You can find this full report at rebelnews.com, but just very briefly explain what happened to you and your child.
Okay, so to start from the beginning of that, it started, I'd say, at school when SOGI 123 was introduced in schools as a program of, as they call it, inclusivity. In fact, it's not. I would say this program rather separate children into different genders and into transgenders or non-transgenders, binary, non-binary, whatnot. It's separating people. They're trying to enforce this propagandistic idea that some children are not included because they are actually not a girl or not a boy. And I would say teenage girls, they are this particular age, and I would say mostly girls have a tendency to fall for that ideology. so that's how it started.
Yeah, and so I met you right when you had filed an injunction with Carrie Linda. I believe you had found out maybe 7 days just before your child was scheduled to have both breasts removed. Are you able to discuss whether your child went through with that or not?
At this point, I would rather not, because I want to keep good relationship with my daughter.
Yeah.
And actually, she is asking me not to call her daughter, but to call her boy. In fact, I totally understand why so many parents are not coming forward. Part of them, they just want to keep good relationship with their children. Part of them are very confused by what medical professionals are telling them, because it's not just the school program, it's also the, I would say, medical professionals, healthcare professionals should come forward and tell the truth about what's happening.
Well, I mean, you know what CD's going through almost more than anybody else here. You're a parent just like him. How are you feeling about what's happening to him? He's not even getting out today. What are your thoughts about what's happening in court today to CD?
Well, I'll tell you that from my point of view, because initially I found my lawyer and lawyer of CD, Carrie Linda, through your video with CD. And if he was not talking, if he was not publishing about it, I wouldn't be even able to find a lawyer who would deal with this matter. So I'm really thankful to him. I think it's a huge breach of the freedom of speech, because I know many cases of, for instance, obstetricians or other health professionals who did something, who malfunctioned or just made an honest mistake, and their names were all over the news. Why names of health professionals who are basically converting our children into something inhuman, I would say? Why their names shouldn't be out to the public?
That's a very good question. That's why we're actually challenging the orders that CD has just pled guilty to breaching, so that people like you and CD can speak more. And I don't want to toot Rebel News' horn, but you just said you found out through the reporting. That's how important it is to be able to report on these types of stories. So again, if you want to help us with that challenge, please donate what you can at letusreport.com. We have to put an end to this. It's not right, and we need to be able to freely inform parents, inform Canadians about what's going on with our children. The afternoon was jam-packed today. CD actually took the stand, and as usual, when you hear CD's story, you know very quickly that it's never been a transgender issue. His stance has always been fighting to do what he believes is best for his child. It's really simple. Trying to prevent your child from doing something that could affect them negatively for the rest of their life. Something so huge as to making them sterile or giving them health issues. But I'm not sure if that was heard loud and clear by Justice Taman. Now, the Crown gave his arguments. I'm told I'm gagged. I'm not able to talk about that as well. Also, Rebel News came up. Both lawyers decided that it's a little bit messy. Some of the files are in family court, some are in criminal court, and an order was made to move everything over to criminal court to make it more easy. But of course, our files are not going to go there, our orders. Justice Taman gave them that and said Rebel News' stuff will stay in family court. So our lawyer Kyle still has his work head out for him. But yeah, so after the Crown gave his arguments and CD took the stand, Justice Taman still has a decision to make. Something I found a little odd was he said to Crown, hey, why don't you consider a fine? Did you ever think of a fine? And he started kind of poking around, talking about how the money that's been donated to CD for his legal funds was donated under criminal behavior. So let's have a quick talk with CD's lawyer, Carrie Linda, and see what he has to say. How did you think CD did on the stand today?
I thought he did very well. I thought he made his position clear and sincere and told his story. I think he's up against a law and order judge which is not, it's neither good nor bad. I just simply hope that when he told the judge that he had made his point and he would be a good boy, that the judge believes him.
Well, one thing we know is is kind of a man of his convictions, right? In that way. Now, what is all this talk about his funding page being brought up? It's almost like the justice threw that out there, like he's looking for more ways to punish him.
He's raised, about $50,000 on his funding page from individuals who thought that should go to him and for lawyers and experts. That was a huge bill from 2 years ago for all those experts. The judge has the ability, if he wishes, to seize it or dedicate it to a charity. It's my hope that if that happens, it'll just spur more people, because people did not give monies that it goes to some charity. But the judge can do what he wants.
Where there's a will, there's always a way. And I'm sure those of us that are concerned about making sure that this story is told will find a way to do it. And I believe we will be aided by the court in that. When this full information is brought out and the rights that CD should enjoy in this so-called free and democratic society are truly realized and enjoyed by him.
A dangerous epidemic of misinformation.
Disinformation campaigns and conspiracy theories.
I'd like to ask you about disinformation.
Disinformation.
Very effective misinformation campaigns.
Misinformation.
Misinformation. COVID-19 misinformation.
Harmful misinformation.
Misinformation.
COVID misinformation.
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 Flag it.
Misinformation. Will the big four companies actually take down these harmful posts when we report them?
YouTube is in the process of removing us from its platform because we continue to bring you the other side of the story. But we're not going to stop. Please head to afteryoutube.com and give us your email so we keep going strong and we stay in touch. It's day 2 of the trial I thought wasn't going to be a trial, honestly. CD pled guilty yesterday. The Crown was okay with the terms, his lawyer was okay with the terms, but Justice Taman wants to keep him behind bars longer. And behind me, they are fighting out the reasons as to why CD took this stand. I don't know what's so confusing, because yesterday in the afternoon, CD actually took the stand inside of the courtroom and clearly explained why he did it. It had nothing to do with transgenderism and everything to do with being a good father, simply trying to make sure your child doesn't make the biggest mistake of their life. It seemed like everybody in the courtroom understood this, but I guess not Justice Taman. I'm going to fill you in on what happens there today, but I just want to say, as you've seen already from some of the people we've interviewed, this isn't just a ban or a gag order on CD. It's not even just a gag order on myself as a journalist. It's a gag order on everybody who wants to take the torch from CD and keep spreading this message so parents know what's up. You might think you're your child's parent, but in BC at least, it could be the government instead. I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm angry. Justice Taman just told us he is seriously considering more prison time or jail time for this father. In fact, he said that 45 days is woefully inadequate for this dad. On top of that, he brought up again the funds that have been donated to CD for his ordeal, whatever expenses he's needed, whether it be legal or what have you. Those funds, Justice Taman, in addition to seriously considering more jail time, also he wants those to be donated to some sort of organization. Now, there wasn't a lot of discussion. One of the things that I thought, and I know other people thought, well, if the money has to go somewhere, it should at least go to that child when that child is an adult. But of course, it was so fast, there wasn't a lot of time, and I just felt that that was a little bit rushed. We'll see what happens. I think it's very likely we're going to see more jail time for this father, and we're also going to see around $50,000 that's been donated to him from people like you being drained. Now, Justice Taman did clarify something that I need to clarify with you guys. Now, as you know from our challenge to have these bans varied so everybody who wants to talk about these kinds of things doesn't have to worry about ending up in jail for bringing you that side of the story. One thing that I have noticed as well is that most people thought that CD was in jail for misgendering, calling his biologically female child a female. Now, I have never said that that's the reason he was in jail. I did know that wasn't the reason. But sometimes I explain to you that this trial is a matter of breaching a protection order. And that protection order did, in fact, include that CD was not allowed to call his own child a daughter. Now, Justice Taman has gone up. He brought up Jordan Peterson and kind of acted like everybody is spreading misinformation because they believe he's in jail for that reason. But what he didn't say is there are far too many bans, there are far too many orders, there are far too many things silencing this story that nobody can keep up. That's what that is. And this is an important matter that needs to be heard, and the courts should be doing this in a clear and concise way so that people like myself can do our job. Now, please help us with our challenge to have these bans varied and shed light on this whole issue by heading to letusreport.com. We're breaking now for lunch, and then I'll be back to tell you what happens finally in day 2. A lot went down in court this morning. What's your take on what happened? Why don't you tell everybody?
Basically, they've kind of been going in circles, and the judge has been getting pretty heated. Carrie Lind, CD's lawyer, they've been talking about the consent form that his daughter signed before going on puberty blockers and testosterone therapy. And in the consent form, it literally states things like, you might have to get your reproductive organs removed. We don't know the long-term effects of testosterone therapy. Basically, it states we don't know any of the long-term effects, and this is totally experimental. So how can a 14-year-old sign a form and give informed consent to possibly sterilizing herself when we don't even know what the effects of these drugs are? If no adults know what the effects of these drugs are, because there's never been any studies, how can a child give informed consent? Obviously, this is impossible. But the judge doesn't want to hear this. The judge just says, I don't connect the dots of why you're bringing up this. And he's stating that he doesn't really understand why the father felt compelled to do things like releasing this consent form on the internet. This is really very simple to understand. His child was coming to harm, thousands of other kids are coming to harm, but the judge is playing dumb, saying that he doesn't get it.
You guys aren't going to believe this. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Complete 180. If you've been following CD on Rebel News or really any of the many interviews you've done, you know where this father stands. And I've been here over the last 2 days hearing him over and over explain to the judge why he took this stand, why he spoke out, even though he was aware it was in breach of the publication bans. It has always been a message or about parental rights, warning other parents of what's happened, and things that I'm not permitted to say to you, and he's not permitted to say, specifically about the reasons why he thinks systems had come together to do this for his child. Well, now in there, Jen Smith, who we recently did a very sort of exclusive report on just the other day when we covered the protest that took place here against medical transitioning from children. Jen Smith got on the stage there and basically said that the reason CD behaved the way he did, the reason he spoke out in the way he did, was because of the far right grifters and nutcases had gotten into his head. So it's a strategy, I suppose. Justice Taman, as I said to you, said he's considering more jail time. And CD has completely flipped the switch and has gone with that narrative, saying that he's been taken advantage of by different publications, and he's sorry for it. And even he mentioned his background as a Christian when he was young, you know, being told, wait till you're 18, wait till you're 18, that played into it. He named different publications, you know, again, saying that basically he was used. I'm not mad at CD. We don't know what it's like. CD basically went into solitary confinement because that's what happens now because of COVID. You're not with anyone for 23 hours a day. We don't know what that does to a person. And the justice made it very clear. Every time he continued to say what he's always said this whole time during this stand, the justice said, it's not computing. It's not computing. But boy, was the justice glued to his statement when it became a focus of the alt-right making this all happen. Now, hopefully Jen Smith's going to walk out here and we can ask him, are we the alt-right that somehow manipulated CD? So we'll ask that question. But while I'm talking to you, make sure you do take a minute, pull out your other device as you're watching this or what have you, and go to afteryoutube.com. We are being targeted and deplatformed from YouTube, so we want to make sure we have a way to get in touch with you in case we lose touch. Am I a grifter? Like Rebel News, are we grifters and just using CD with our coverage? Or
grifters are people who, I would say, deliberately push buttons in order to serve their own purposes. Okay.
Right, so my question is with Rebel News, I mean, myself as an independent journalist, I'm very concerned with what's happening here.
Right.
So there was a label put in there, far right, and I'm sure you're well aware that that can be used to broadly explain a large group of people. So I'm specifically asking, are you referring to Rebel News? We've been very close to the story. And are you referring to me as a journalist?
In the context of the court case today, I was referring to Mass Resistance and Arthur Shaper. And some of these other people connected to, like, I don't see how anybody can see Mass Resistance as anything other than far right. Okay, but I'm not going to get into a debate about that because I'm operating on 3 or 4 hours sleep. If you want to talk about this again, contact me and I'll be more than willing to give you a full sort of explanation about that. But please keep in mind that the father here is my friend. I do not want him to continue to stay in jail. Okay, and
neither do I. And there are no hard feelings against CD or anything like that. I totally understand. Justice Taman was not playing around. He made it very clear. I don't accept or understand what your excuses are for why you're saying you're taking this stand. Right. And he also said he's considering more jail time. Right. So I see that, and we see a 180 here. Right. So I just want to give the people the opportunity to hear from you who exactly you were blaming for CD stand this time.
There was no one party that I was blaming, okay, so except for, I would say, beyond Mass Resistance, because I've had enormous problems getting Mass Resistance to remove the material that was in violation of the court orders, that we knew was an agitation to the courts, and all I simply said was that, okay, the father has done his protest, okay, he's achieved something I've been trying to achieve for 4 years, which is to spread this message. Now, can we please stop and remove this material so that we can get him out of jail? And they refused, and I will not apologize for going after him or anyone else like that.
Well, that brings an end to day 1 and day 2 of this trial. No hard feelings against this father. I cannot judge someone who's desperate for their freedom. Make sure you continue to follow us because we're going to give you the update on the actual ruling, and we're not going to stop our fight against these bans because, as you saw from the other person we interviewed, he's not the only father going through this, not the only parent anyways. Drea Humphrey for Rebel News. All right, guys, we're going to say this a lot because it's so important. If you like the reports that we give you, the information we share with you, we need you to go to afteryoutube.com, and we need your email so we can keep in touch since we're being deplatformed on YouTube. Now, if you've already done this, you can do us one more thing. You can simply share our reports with people you know who would appreciate them. Thank you so much.